Congressman Mfume, Congresswoman Elfreth, and Congressman Olszewski, who will be here in a minute. We're pleased also to be joined by County Council members Julian Jones and Pat Young. Thank you for joining us. And Delegate Ruth and some other members of the General Assembly. This is solidarity at every level of government. Thank you for being here. And I want to thank all of the organizations that have been mobilized to save Social Security and protect Medicare. They're gathered here, including Social Security Works. Thank you for being here. The National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Public Citizen. People's Action. Progressive Maryland. The Alliance for Retired Americans. And Move On. Thank all of you for being here and mobilizing. And of course, most of all, I want to thank the men and the women who work every day to deliver Social Security for the American people. Thank you. To our federal workers, we're joined by the National Vice President of the Union for those workers at Social Security, AFG. Jason Anderson is here. He'll be hearing from him. And the President of Social Security Administration Council 220, Jessica LaPointe. Thank you for being here, and others. Look, over the last 21 days, we have seen Elon Musk conducting illegal raids on federal agencies with his DOGE crew. They have accessed highly sensitive personal information on Americans at the Department of Treasury, including Social Security numbers, bank accounts, and other very sensitive information. They have also, in the last 48 hours, worked to shut down a number of federal agencies. They're working to shut down the Agency for International Development. And I will remind people that AID helps stop diseases overseas, which not only saves lives overseas, but stops those diseases from coming across the water to America right here. And they have shut down a consumer protection agency. So this is the richest man in the world, shutting down a consumer protection agency that returned billions of dollars to the American people, dollars that they had been cheated out of by some corporations that engaged in fraud. And obviously, those corporations that engaged in that cheating, they don't like that Consumer Protection Agency, and so they went and shut it down. So this is a pattern that we see going on, and we have word, there have been news reports, that their next stop after the Department of Education, where they've been, after NOAA, after CMS for Medicare, is going to be the Social Security Administration. And we say, no, keep your hands off of our Social Security. That's right. Now, I want to say something about what they claim they're doing, because this has nothing to do with government efficiency. If you wanted to make the federal government more efficient, you would not start by firing all the inspector generals at all the federal agencies. Right? The inspector generals are there to look out for fraud, waste, and abuse. And so firing them actually just clears the way for the DOGE people to engage in fraud and waste and abuse. And that's the other part of their plan. And that's one of the reasons we're here, because they plan to replace about 50 to 60,000 federal employees with political cronies. This is the so-called Schedule F. It's an innocent-sounding thing with very dire consequences for the American people. So first you get rid of the IGs, then you fire merit-based federal employees, and you bring in political cronies. So the way I see it, this is not a recipe for government efficiency. This is a recipe for corruption by the DOGE boys and this government and this Trump administration. And all you have to do is look at a couple documents. One is Project 2025. You know, on the campaign trail, when he was asked, candidate Trump said, "What's that? I've got nothing to do with that." But he just installed Russell Vogt, who's the architect of 2025, at the Office of Management and Budget. The Office of Management and Budget is the command and control center for the budgets of all the federal agencies. And they're going to work trying to dismantle those agencies. And part of their goal is to eliminate important services for the American people and use those savings for tax cuts for the very rich and the very wealthy, people like Elon Musk. Are we going to let that happen? And if you look at the House Republican Study Group plan, and we got our House colleagues here, if you look at that plan, which is what they're talking about doing, they are talking about very deep cuts to Medicaid, which is a program which is essential to working families, to people with disabilities, to kids, and tens of millions of people throughout the country. If you look at that plan, they're talking about cutting Social Security by increasing the retirement age for Americans. And if you look at that plan, they're talking about moving people from the traditional Medicare program and pushing them toward Medicare Advantage and others. So, look, the bottom line is this. Thank goodness for the courts. We've seen a flurry of court filings because we've seen such a flurry of illegal activity. I've never seen so many temporary restraining orders issued in such a short period of time against the U.S. government. But we're here to say it can't just be the courts. It has to be all of us on the front lines. We will succeed. Keep your hands off our Social Security. And with that, let me bring up my great new partner in the United States Senate. Thank you, Maryland, for electing Angela Alsobrooks to the United States Senate.
Well, good morning. I am so glad to see all of you here today, because I know that the intention of this administration is to make us feel demoralized, to make many of us feel frightened, to incite fear, to silence people, to make all of us feel the chaos, and in the words of his recent nominee and person who was confirmed vote, he said that he hoped to cause trauma among civil servants. Well, your presence here today says it all. And what it says, well, you know what? We will not let him succeed, because what we recognize is that we are not powerless. Power comes from the people. Power comes from the people. And we also recognize that it really does not have to be this way. We're standing in front of the Social Security Administration, which stands as a reminder of what this could be. When we think about President Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, who started the Social Security Administration, it was his words who said, it was a president who believed that in difficult times, in his words, we Americans everywhere must and shall choose the path of social justice, the path of faith, the path of hope, the path of love toward our fellow man. It is so clear that this president wants no part of this, that he doesn't believe in our humanity, that he doesn't want us to have hope, that he doesn't believe in justice, fairness, or the law. He doesn't believe in any of those things. And so it is incumbent upon all of us to continue to raise our voices as we are today, to choose the path that President Roosevelt chose in forming a program that, let's be clear what that program is. It is one of the most important social programs of our lifetime when we think about Social Security, one of the most significant social programs of our lifetime. And this is a program that many worked for, worked many, many years for, to contribute, because it is America's promise to us when we paid into Social Security. And yet this is under attack even today. We recognize as well that the Social Security program is not just the program, but we are standing in front of a building that represents thousands of Marylanders who have been coming to work in this building. Civil servants for over 60 years now who have been coming to this building, doing the essential work of processing Social Security checks for nearly 72 million Americans. 72 million Americans. And be clear, when we think about the servants who stand in this building and buildings all across our country, these are men and women who come to work every day. And these are not Democratic jobs or Republican jobs. These are American jobs. It is also the case that those who have served in this building do so no matter who the president is. Many of them have served for decades under Republican presidents, under Democratic presidents, again, because they serve the people. And so what we know here is that the work that our civil servants do is far-reaching. And it is really important to say that when you target civil servants, you also target the people they serve. This is a really important point. And so it is not just the people who are sitting in these seats, but the people that they serve. And so if you look behind me, you know who's in this building? These are the American people who are in this building. And they serve our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our mothers and fathers like mine, our friends, our neighbors, and family members with disabilities who rely on Social Security, and their children. And in his wicked hunt for vengeance, this president has decided that no target is too small, no family is too vulnerable, and no American is out of bounds. And this isn't just about an attack on Americans who are in this building, but it's an attack as well on the exhausted mother who calls 988 for a lifeline for support in the darkest days. It's an attack on that single dad who has to call out of work because his daughter's Head Start classroom closed its doors. This is an attack on family businesses that didn't get their disaster relief check to rebuild after the flood receded, and an attack on the grandmother who's just trying to stretch her fixed income to feed a nourishing and to have a nourishing meal for her grandkids. It's an attack on the woman who is seeking refuge from an abusive partner just to be turned away from the local family shelter. It's an attack on that first-generation college student who has come to rely on a Pell Grant and who doesn't know how they will continue to stay in school. It's about those veterans who are looking to make sure that their appointment at the VA won't get canceled. And I ask you a question. And what is this about? What is it for? None of it is about making our government more efficient. And you know what? If they want to have a conversation about efficiency, we can have that conversation about cutting costs. But how deeply unserious and how deeply callous is it to cut costs on the backs of the veteran? Do we cut costs on the backs of the kid in Head Start, the grandmother on Medicare? How shameful is all of this? How shameful is it? And I want you to shame. This is shameful. It is disgusting. And you know what? Tell me this. And this is important for us to notice. This is what Senator Van Hollen was pointing our attention to. It's all a rouge. What is it about? Does cutting Medicare lower the cost of eggs? I don't think so. How does slashing funding at the Social Security Administration cut the cost of gas? How does firing a bunch of civil servants lower the cost of housing? And how does Elon Musk having access to Social Security lower the cost of prescription drug medications? It doesn't. It's been already a whole month, and we have yet to see this administration do any of what is promised, a single attempt to lower costs for Marylanders or for the American people. Something the president vowed to do on day one, and he has not done it. The day they want to start doing that work, then my door is open, as are the doors of all of my colleagues here who are here, whose doors are open to do the work on behalf of the American people. So for as long as they continue to keep hardworking Marylanders in their crosshairs, for as long as they continue this awful witch hunt that will harm working class Americans everywhere. And let me tell you, this man is hurting people who voted for him, the people who didn't vote for him, and the people who did not vote at all. He's hurting all Americans in a way that is so callous. And so that they will continue in this day to meet our patriotic obstinance that puts our country first, that puts the middle class first, that puts people first, whether they voted for him or not. All of us deserve to have a president who can see us. So I thank you all so much again for coming out today. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce to you Baltimore's favorite son, Representative Kwesi Mfume, who has served us so honorably. He's going to be followed by one of Baltimore's other favorite sons. He's going to say, now, wait a minute. We now have new Congressman Johnny Oshescu who will come after him. But please help me to welcome Representative Kwesi Mfume.
First of all, good morning. Good morning. When people see people like all of you who are out today, they believe differently about their own power. So every time we can assemble like this, we have to do it. And every time you run into somebody, that says you can't take down that power, we have to say, yes, we can. Yes, we can. Local 220, Local 220, where are you? Where's the local from AFGE that worked here? Okay. I just want to make sure you're here because we got some real fighting to do. Let me just say this. For 50 years, 50, I've been in fights like this. And for 50 years, I've seen fights like this become victorious. Because people don't stop. And so I'm glad all of the media is here. We need you to tell this every time you get an opportunity, over and over and over again. Because so many people think that they have no power. There are men and women in this building and elsewhere who have worked hard all their lives. They've loved their country. They've highly favored their faith. They believed in an America that was for all people. They get up every morning. They put on their clothes and they come to buildings like this all over the country to do a simple, nonpartisan job, and that is to serve the people of America with the best service they can provide. Yes, they work hard. Yes, they play by the rules. Yes, they love their country. Yes, they cherish their faith. And yes, they want a fair shot. What we're seeing coming out of Washington is anything but that. Every time you hear DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, you just remember it is the Department of Government Evil. Over. So you've heard from Chris Van Hollen, our senior senator, and Angela Also Brooks, our junior senator. You're going to hear from two of my colleagues in the House, Johnny Olszewski and Sarah Elfridge. But others need to hear from all of you. Everybody out here has the power to do something, and we will find a way to do it together. This fight is not for the feeble. It is not for the faithless. This will be a congressional fight, a constitutional fight, a legal fight, and on days like this, a street fight. Yes, we will stand. All over this country, we've got to meet the wickedness where it is. Leave federal employees alone. Stop trying to steal the private information of American citizens. Help us to find a way to push back, and we will be victorious. Because long after this day, somebody somewhere will look back through the telescope of time, another generation, and to say that in this time and on this day, and all of us stood for what's right and stood against all that is wrong. So give yourself a round of applause. Don't get weary. Don't get weary. And please welcome Congressman Johnny Olszewski.
Give it up for Kwesi Mfume, everybody. A real fighter, champion. I am honored to be here with my colleague, Representative Mfume, as well as our U.S. Senators Van Hollen, also Brooks, Representative Elfreth, our friends in labor, but more importantly, all of you and the hard workers here at Social Security.
That's right.
You know, it's said, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And today we are standing because we're not falling for the lies, for the stealing, for the taking of what is ours. This is a government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's built on foundational principles. I'm really tall, y'all. It's built on foundational principles like rule of law that says everyone's equal under the law. It's built on principles like consent of the governed that says that we have to agree with what our government is doing. Do we agree with what's going on right now? No. Are we going to stand up and fight against it? Yes. It's built on checks and balances. It's built on federalism. So you can't unilaterally go in and wipe out agencies. You can't unilaterally go in and take hard-earned benefits. You know, the civil service was created because of corruption, because we wanted to stop what this president and Mr. Musk are accusing us of trying to stop now. Look back in history. You know, actually, I want to invite the president and Mr. Musk to come back to my American government classes, learn a thing or two about how democracy is supposed to work. I joined, like Senator Brooks, I spent quite a lot of time, and like Administrator O'Malley, we spent a lot of time as executives. We know a thing or two about finding waste, finding efficiencies, and we do welcome that conversation. But there is a way to do it. President Trump, you have the White House. You have control of the House and the Senate. Come to the table. Let's have the conversation. Let's have Republicans in the House and Senate actually have to vote on these illegal and unconstitutional actions. So we know they've got Project 2025. But what you see today is the start of Project 2026, where those who stand by quietly and who are afraid to or who are unwilling to step forward and call out what's happening, you will be held accountable in this next election. And so there are good people serving in the United States Congress who might not share the same party as myself and my peers here. There are. But we need them to step up, and we need them to speak out. Consent of the governed. The power is here. The power is in the people who aren't here because they're working, trying to process the benefits for our veterans and for those who have given their lives in service to this country.
We represent them.
We're going to make sure that what is happening here continues. So we create that space that you either speak up or the people are going to hold you accountable.
That's right. That's right.
I'm lucky to be in this work with another amazing new representative representing the capital city and Howard County. Please welcome my good friend, Sarah Elfreth, everybody.
I am here in representation of 44,000 federal workers who call the 3rd Congressional District home. I am here as the proud daughter of 2 civil servants, now retired, collecting Social Security that they paid into, and that the hardworking people behind us are spending their careers processing and ensuring that one of the greatest social contracts this country has ever built, Social Security, where before more than half of seniors lived and died in poverty, where our children who are developmentally disabled or otherwise disabled had no recourse, no support from their government, where dependents of those folks had no recourse or no support from their government, this country stepped up and federal civil servants stepped up to ensure that social contract exists and continues. And yet, an unelected person, unconfirmed by Congress, there's no check and balance for Mr. Musk, who has billions of dollars in self-interest with contracts with this federal government and foreign governments, has his hands on our data and is systematically coming for civil servants across this country. We have the playbook, folks. Project 2025 is going to tell us where they are going next. Department of Education, NOAA, incredibly important for Maryland. And Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those are social contracts that, as Congressman Olszewski pointed out, are here because of the consent of the governed. And so we need to fight with every ounce of our beings. Thank you for being here today. We are in the minority in the House and the Senate, and so you are so important. You are the key here. My phone in the office has been ringing off the hook. Thousands of Marylanders have been calling us, and I thank you. But I've talked to a few of my Republican House members. Their phones are not ringing, folks. They are not hearing from their constituents. So the work ahead is important. We need three. We just need three to see the light, want to uphold that social contract, who know that our hardworking civil servants serve the Constitution and the people, and do not need or should never have to take a loyalty oath to the president. So thank you for being here. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for standing with us. It is an honor to represent you, and we're going to keep up the fight each and every day. And I'll bring up our Senator, Chris Van Hollen.
Thank you, Sarah. Somebody asked where the workers who are part of AFG Council 220 are, and the answer is they're all working inside the building to provide Social Security benefits to hardworking Americans who earn them. But we have their representative here, their spokesperson here, and that's who you're going to hear from in a minute. And after you hear from him, you're going to hear from a former administrator for the Social Security Administration who respected the federal employees who worked for that, Martin O'Malley. But first, the representative for all those hardworking men and women, great patriots of the Social Security Administration, Council 2020 of AFG, Rich Couture.
Thank you. Come on over. So thank you, everybody. You've heard a lot from the Maryland congressional delegation so far about the attack that the Social Security Administration and indeed the apolitical civil service is under right now. You've heard a lot in recent weeks about this so-called deferred resignation boondoggle that is being fought up in Boston right now. I want to tell you something. This agency has been suffering under record attrition. We're at a 50-year staffing low. And despite all that, the hardworking people in this building behind me and the 42,000 AFG bargaining unit employees we represent all over the country made strident improvements in productivity and bringing down service delivery times, notwithstanding the fact that we suffered historic levels of attrition when we returned from the pandemic evacuation. We lost over 10% of our workforce nationwide just with a reduction of telework. We knew that if telework was taken away from our folks, and surveys have shown this, that we could lose up to half of the hardworking people who are here in this building or at the field offices, the hearing offices, the payment centers, and the 800 number offices all over the country. If you think you have service delivery problems now, just wait. Just wait. But that's the other insidious part of this. It is hard. The chaos and the confusion is the point. The cruelty is the point. We can't keep track of all of the attacks on the civil service because there are so many of them to keep track of. There's so many. One thing that hasn't been reported with the deferred resignation bit, not too much reporting, excuse me. The White House and DOGE, which we believe stands for the destroyers of government effectiveness, they've told the General Services Administration, which is the nation's landlord, to start terminating 7,500, every single federal lease across the country. So not only are they trying to drive us out, and I'll tell you, when I take claims, when she's taking claims, when we work on cases, we don't check your voter registration. We don't ask you who you voted for in the last election. We do our jobs without regard to politics, day in and day out. So when you think about it, them trying to drive out folks at SSA, EPA, TSA, all the alphabet soup of agencies that my union represents, it's about destroying service to the American public to open the door to, as I've heard the word uttered many times here, greed, privatization, destruction of benefits, destruction of public service. Now imagine they're ordering us all back into the office, notwithstanding we have a legally binding contract that we are going to fight to uphold. But they are, think about it, if they're making your presence on site as an employee a requirement of the job, but then they close the office you have to go to, what do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen? This is all about destroying the size of the federal civil service and eliminating our ability to serve the American people who have already paid for the service, who have already paid for the access to their benefits. At buildings like this one and at offices all over the country. So if you think you have service delivery problems now, if you think you're waiting a long time on our 800 number, if you think that you're waiting a long time to get your claim processed, if you think you have a long time waiting in an office, imagine what that service is going to be like if you've got no office to call, if you've got no office to visit, if there are no dedicated, apolitical civil servants there to serve you when you want help. We deserve better. The American people deserve better. And I hope that we all stand and fight this together. Are you with us? Thank you.
I wish I'd snap a picture of that. All right. Hey, everybody say it with me. I think you agree. My name's Martin O'Malley. I'm the former Commissioner of Social Security. And I think we can all agree that there is no finer congressional delegation that any state has ever sent to the United States Congress than Maryland's congressional delegation. So as Senator Van Hollen led us off with this, the message is, Elon Musk, keep your hands off of Social Security. If you want to find an example of efficiency, look no further than the men and women right behind us in these buildings. And the 1,211 offices all across the United States. This is the largest insurance company in the free world. And you know what its overhead is? Less than 1%. Less than 1%. Allstate operates on 19%. Liberty Mutual operates on 23%. These men and women serving those in the dawn of life, those in the dusk of life, those with disabilities, parents with children with severe disabilities, they do it for less than 1%. Less than 1%. House Republicans have cut this agency to a 50-year low, and now the unelected co-president wants to cut Social Security even further. One of the bright line rules that we had here when I had the honor to lead these 70,000 men and women was that this is personal data. This is private data. This is every man and woman in America from their very first job, all of their earnings, for the benefits they work a lifetime for. That is personal data, and it was a fireable offense to go into other people's personal data when you did not have a business purpose related to that person's application. And now these boys from DOGE roll in violation of the Constitution, in violation of the law, in flagrant violation. And so we say again, Elon Musk, keep your hands off of Social Security. This is not about efficiency. This is about two things. This is about stealing the personal data of Americans, and it is about taking a lifetime of earned benefits, your Social Security benefits, and turning it into a Bitcoin bank. Right behind me in this other building, I conclude with this, is a memorial garden. There are the images of presidents, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, the Bushes, Democrats and Republicans alike. And they all agree. And they say to us from the grave, there is no more sacred promise among us and between us than Social Security. So rise up like your country depends on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Martin O'Malley. And let's hear it again. Elon Musk, keep your hands off of Social Security. Thank you all for being here. We're willing to take a few questions from the press if there are any. Any questions from the press?
How can they do this? I mean,
All right. If there are no more questions from the press, we will hang around. Oh, go ahead.
I spoke to a number of people in this crowd who are really frustrated with what they feel has been a relative lack of action from the Democratic Party. So how can the Democratic Party step up and actually implement the system of checks and balances? And those are directly right.
Well, the Democratic Party is out here. This is the Democratic Party. A lot of people, but also people who are not Democrats, need to be out here as well, because everybody, as you heard, is impacted by Social Security. Doesn't matter what party you are. Now, I can tell you this, that colleagues from the Maryland delegation, we are fighting every day in the United States Senate and the House of Representatives to stop this power grab and to stop these illegal actions. We're also doing everything we can to support the court actions that are being taken, because that is the first line of defense when you have massive law breaking and when you have Republicans on Capitol Hill who refuse to do anything. So we are doing everything in our power, and we will continue to do. And I can tell you, Team Maryland has been the tip of the spear in terms of fighting against Elon Musk's takeover. Thank you all very much for being here, and we'll stick around. Which is Elon Musk, keep your hands off of our Social Security. And when I say we, I mean all of these great people behind me. Thank you all for being here. When I say we, I mean Team Maryland, and you're going to hear from them. Senator Alsobrooks, Congressman Mfume, Congresswoman Elfreth, and Congressman Olszewski, who will be here in a minute. We're pleased also to be joined by County Council members Julian Jones and Pat Young. Thank you for joining us. And Delegate Ruth and some other members of the General Assembly. This is solidarity at every level of government. Thank you for being here. And I want to thank all of the organizations that have been mobilized to save Social Security and protect Medicare. They're gathered here, including Social Security Works. Thank you for being here. The National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Public Citizen, People's Action, Progressive Maryland, the Alliance for Retired Americans, and Move On. Thank all of you for being here and mobilizing. And of course, most of all, I want to thank the men and the women who work every day to deliver Social Security for the American people. Thank you. To our federal workers, we're joined by the National Vice President of the Union for those workers at Social Security, AFG. Jason Anderson is here. He'll be hearing from him. and the president of Social Security Administration Council 220, Jessica Lapointe. Thank you for being here, and others. Look, over the last 21 days, we have seen Elon Musk conducting illegal raids on federal agencies with his DOGE crew. They have accessed highly sensitive personal information on Americans at the Department of Treasury, including Social Security numbers, bank accounts, and other very sensitive information. They have also, in the last 48 hours, worked to shut down a number of federal agencies. They're working to shut down the Agency for International Development. And I will remind people that AID helps stop diseases overseas, which not only saves lives overseas, but stops those diseases from coming across the water to America right here. And they have shut down a consumer protection agency. So this is the richest man in the world, shutting down a consumer protection agency that returned billions of dollars to the American people, dollars that they had been cheated out of by some corporations that engaged in fraud. And obviously, those corporations that engaged in that cheating, they don't like that consumer protection agency, and so they went and shut it down. So this is a pattern that we see going on, and we have word, there have been news reports, that their next stop after the Department of Education, where they've been, after NOAA, after CMS for Medicare, is going to be the Social Security Administration. And we say, no, keep your hands off of our Social Security.
That's right.
Now, I want to say something about what they claim they're doing, because this has nothing to do with government efficiency. If you wanted to make the federal government more efficient, you would not start by firing all the inspector generals at all the federal agencies. Right? The inspector generals are there to look out for fraud, waste, and abuse. And so firing them actually just clears the way for the DOGE people to engage in fraud and waste and abuse. And that's the other part of their plan. And that's one of the reasons we're here, because they plan to replace about 50 to 60,000 federal employees with political cronies. This is the so-called Schedule F. It's an innocent-sounding thing with very dire consequences for the American people. So first you get rid of the IGs, then you fire merit-based federal employees, and you bring in political cronies. So the way I see it, this is not a recipe for government efficiency. This is a recipe for corruption by the DOGE boys and this government and this Trump administration. And all you have to do is look at a couple documents. One is Project 2025. You know, on the campaign trail, when he was asked, candidate Trump said, "What's that? I've got nothing to do with that." But he just installed Russell Vought, who's the architect of 2025, at the Office of Management and Budget. The Office of Management and Budget is the command and control center for the budgets of all the federal agencies. And they're going to work trying to dismantle those agencies. And part of their goal is to eliminate